It was pitch dark inside the van. The 13-year-old schoolgirl's hands and feet were tied. There was a gag in her mouth. The girl felt that the car was moving at a decent speed. At the cost of incredible efforts, she managed to free her hands. The girl was lucky that one of the kidnappers did not have time to tighten the knot tightly in his haste. Now it was no longer difficult for her to free her legs. She understood that in order to survive, she needed to get out of the van. And to do this, she needed to open the doors of the van from the inside. In the darkness, the schoolgirl felt the lock. She was lucky. The lock opened from the inside. Having opened the door, she saw a country road. Now she could only pray for one thing. Maybe the kidnapper would stop the car, and she would be able to jump out and escape. Who knows? If not for the brave actions of this girl, a series of brutal murders committed by a sophisticated sadist would have continued for many years. On May 5, 2001, in the French city of Sedan, located 10 kilometers from the Belgian border, a 13-year-old girl named Monanya Tampung disappeared. The girl lived in the house that you see on your screens. She was supposed to return home from the media library at about 5 o'clock in the evening. When Monanya did not return home at the appointed time, her parents became worried. The mother took a photo of her daughter and went to the media library. Here she was told that her daughter left the media library at 4:30 in the evening. An hour later, the mother was sitting at the police station and writing a statement about the disappearance of her daughter. The police took the disappearance of the child seriously, since, according to the mother, her daughter never left home without permission. And in general, she was very responsible. The police asked the mother about her daughter and the circumstances of her disappearance. She told the inspector that she, her husband and daughter, had moved to France from Thailand several years ago. The daughter integrated into the school community quite easily. Manani had no problems with her classmates. Soon, leaflets with a wanted poster for the missing girl were posted around the city. Police officers and volunteers searched the forests and forest park areas adjacent to the city. The search continued for several weeks, but did not bring results. Interviews with local residents did not provide any information for the investigators. 10 months later, a significant event occurred in the case of the missing girl. On March 1, 2002, Belgian colleagues called the investigative department of the Reims police. They reported very important information on the case. Thus, according to a Belgian police officer, a human skull and bone fragments were found in the forest, 30 kilometers from the city of Sedan. A woman's watch and a small gold ring were found near the remains. The watch and ring matched those indicated in the wanted poster for the missing Monanya. The items were delivered to France. The mother identified her daughter's things. Investigators immediately assumed that the crime could have had a sexual connotation, since valuables were not touched. No traces of a struggle were found at the scene where the remains were found. Perhaps the girl was already dead, and the criminal got rid of her body there. It is not surprising that after so many months, not a single witness was found who would remember information useful to detectives. The gruesome discovery reminded the Belgian police of another case from 2 years ago. In July 2000, the body of 18-year-old Céline Cezanne was found in Belgium. She disappeared when leaving the school building. That day, the girl was taking an exam. After successfully passing the exam, she did not return home. The police accepted the statement from the father only 48 hours later. Celine's body was found in the forest. The girl was sexually assaulted, then killed. It should be noted here that Celine's father, upon learning the news that Monanya's remains had been found in the forest, immediately assumed that his daughter's murder was related to this case. Investigative agencies in neighboring countries also leaned toward this version. There was no progress in the murder cases until the summer of 2003. On June 26, 2003, the media published news of an unsuccessful attempt to kidnap a schoolgirl. An unknown man approached 13-year-old Maria Ascension and asked her to show him where the school was. The girl pointed to the school with her hand, but the stranger said that he did not quite understand her and asked the girl to get into his car and show her the way. Maria refused to get into the car, but the man calmly said, "It's not good not to trust people." This phrase, said in a calm, confident tone, convinced Maria to get into the car. At that moment, the stranger locked the car doors. The man took the girl to a deserted place, tied her up, and threw her into the van of the car. Marie managed to free herself, and when the car stopped at a red light at an intersection in Bahrain, about 10 kilometers from the abduction site, the girl opened the door of the van and ran away. Marie remembered the license plate number of the car. The girl was picked up by another driver, who immediately took her to the nearest police station. The police quickly determined from the database that the van belonged to a certain Monique Olivier. Since the driver was a man, investigators assumed that the car was driven by her husband, 61-year-old Michel Fournier. Michel, his wife Monique, and their son Selim lived in Belgium. At that time, the Belgian police had no information about Michel. During his entire stay in Belgium, the man had never been prosecuted even for a minor offense. The Belgian police made a request to their French colleagues. The answer to the request was unexpected. Michel had previously been prosecuted for crimes against the sexual inviolability of minors. Law enforcement agencies in France had the following information about Michel. Michel Fournier was born in 1942 to a simple working-class family in the city of Sedan, where he spent his childhood. Little is known about his childhood. France was under German occupation at the time of his birth. His mother worked in the German commandant's office. Michel was fond of chess and reading. He easily quoted Dostoevsky and Camus. Fournier served in the army. After completing his service, he worked as a milling machine operator and carpenter. In 1967, he was given his first suspended sentence for assaulting a minor. At that time, he was already married. He was raising a 3-year-old daughter. Having learned about her husband's hobbies with underage girls, his wife immediately filed for divorce. Michel married a second time. In his second marriage, he had a son and twin daughters. The second marriage also did not settle the man down. He again attacked girls and women and raped them. In total, between 1977 and 1984, he committed 15 attacks. The nature of the attacks was always similar. He lured the victims into his car, tied them up, took them to a secluded place, and raped them. Then he abandoned them. He confessed to his crimes then. Moreover, he presented the court with a summary table of all the attacks he had committed. In the table, he described in detail the places, times, and circumstances of the attacks. He remembered the faces of all his victims. He remembered down to the smallest detail the clothes that women and girls were wearing at the time of his attacks. And most importantly, he described in detail how and in what way he raped each of his victims, indicated the names of many victims and their ages. A special place in the table was occupied by a column with a note, "Was the victim a virgin or not?" In his diaries, he noted how important it was for him that the victim was a virgin. He himself was a virgin when he first married. After the wedding, he was deeply disappointed. It turned out that his first wife had already lost her virginity. This greatly offended him. Michel's series of attacks was interrupted after his failure in September 1982. Mitchell lured 14-year-old Diana Lugino into his car and drove him into the forest. According to the girl, he behaved with restraint and said that he wanted to play a game with her involving tying. He would tie her up and simulate sexual intercourse. He also asked if she was a virgin. The girl nodded affirmatively. He tied her up and raped her. The girl later recalled, "When she cried, the criminal cried with her." Then Michel behaved even more strangely. He took Diana home. The girl immediately wanted to take a shower, but the mother noticed the child's condition and managed to find out the reason. The mother and daughter immediately went to the police station. Michel was detained. He denied the fact of rape. The case went to court, where Fournier was sentenced to 7 years in prison. In 1984, while serving a prison sentence for sexual abuse of 5 other young girls, Fournier began corresponding with Monique Olivier through the prison Pen Pal program. Monique was 38 years old at the time. Divorced Monique was raising 2 children and worked as a nurse. Michel wrote her letters with declarations of love. Monique's literary style won over Michel. In her letters, she reciprocated his feelings. Despite the gravity of the crime committed, violence against minors, Michel was released from prison just 3 years after his imprisonment. At the time of his release, his second wife filed for divorce, but the enamored Monique Olivier was already waiting for Michel. Immediately after his release, the rapist disappeared from the sight of law enforcement agencies. Michel and Monique settled in a house he inherited in the commune of Saint-Cyr-le-Calon. Let's return to our investigation of murders and kidnappings. On June 26, 2003, Fournier was arrested at his home in Sarthe-Custine, Belgium. The man denied his guilt in the kidnapping of a schoolgirl, although 13-year-old Marie recognized her kidnapper. He called the girl's testimony fiction. During the interrogation, investigators paid attention to the peculiarities of the suspect's behavior. After each question, he took a long pause before giving his answer. He always closed his eyes. He carefully considered each answer. Investigators managed to combine the kidnapping cases with the murder cases of Manani Tampong and Celine Season. On the day of the suspect's arrest, his home was searched. The officers inspected the van using documents belonging to his wife. Forensic experts found several hairs in the van. The collected material was sent to the lab. However, the lab specialists immediately informed the investigators that DNA testing was unlikely to be effective. The hair was without follicles. A hair follicle was required to conduct a full DNA test. Based on the test results, the specialists could only confidently state that the hair could have belonged to an Asian person. The investigators suspected that the couple were involved in the murders, but did not have any solid evidence. The suspects were silent, not refusing to testify. Interrogations using a polygraph also did not produce the desired result. Monica Levier was released on her own recognizance. The woman was given the right to visit her husband in the visiting room at the pre-trial detention center. The investigators decided to resort to trickery. Microphones were installed in the visiting room in violation of the rules. From a legal point of view, such actions were illegal. Such recordings of conversations cannot be included in a trial. However, the investigation could have found out what the husband and wife were talking about. The wiretapping did not have the desired effect. The spouses did not discuss their past affairs when they met. The investigation was ready to accept the fact that they would only have to bring charges for the kidnapping of Maria Ascension. And suddenly, Monique Levier comes to confess. The woman decided to testify against her husband and herself. If you suddenly thought that she repented of what she had done, you are mistaken. The fact is that Monique read an article about the famous Belgian pedophile Marc Dutroux. In the news, she was frightened by the fact that in addition to Dutroux, His wife, Michelle Martin, was held accountable for pedophilia. The term was enormous for a woman. 30 years of imprisonment. Michelle served 16 years. Monique Olivier was afraid that the same fate would befall her if everything came to light and she was brought to Belgian justice. Monique not only confessed to the investigators about the crimes they already knew about, but also revealed other terrible secrets. Monique said that her husband really did kill Monanya Tampong and Céline Season. The Fournier family moved to the Belgian town of Gedin in the early 1990s. On May 16, 2000, Michelle crossed the Franco-Belgian border alone in Cher-les-Villes-Mézières and, in the late afternoon, lured 18-year-old Céline, who was returning home from school, into his van. After tying up the schoolgirl, he drove into the forest on the Belgian side. He raped Céline, strangled her with a rope, and dumped her body in the forest 10 kilometers from Sedan. On May 5, 2001, Fournier was returning to Sedan and met Monanya Tampong. As we remember, she left the media library building. He invited her to come to his house and play with his son. Having accepted the offer, Monanya climbed into the van. Fournier headed towards the Belgian border. After crossing the border, he parked his car on the edge of the forest, in Kamuni Nalvo. Here he raped Monanya and strangled her. Monique also added that before killing the Thai girl, her husband told her the following words: "I met a little Asian girl. I'll go and get her." After confessing to the murders, Monique began to talk about a whole series of crimes committed by her and her husband. On December 11, 1987, Fournier and Olivier drove to Auxerre in separate cars. The purpose of the trip was very specific. The virgin hunter had his eye on a victim, 17-year-old Isabelle Laville, whom the couple had seen the day before. Isabelle was returning home from college at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Isabelle's mother knew that the girl wanted to go shopping to buy Christmas presents in advance. Olivier stopped the car and asked Laville to get in with her and give her directions to the nearest hospital. The schoolgirl did not suspect the woman. Laville agreed. Driving along the road, Olivier drove up to the place where Fournier was standing by his car with the hood open. Olivier played the role of a compassionate woman who wanted to help a stranger. She offered Michelle a ride to the nearest car service. Fournier sat in the back seat next to Isabelle. On the way, he attacked the victim and injected her with a sleeping pill. The couple brought the girl to their home in Saint-Cyr-le-Calonne, where Fournier raped and then killed the girl. Isabelle's body was dumped in an abandoned well in Bussy-en-Étais. After the missing girl's parents filed a police report, flyers with a wanted poster for the girl were posted around the city. The police assumed that she might have been kidnapped for ransom, but her parents were not wealthy people. The news of the missing girl shook the town community. The local football team offered a cash reward for any information about the missing girl. The first few weeks after her disappearance, the gendarmerie did not make any special efforts to search for her. Laville's parents were inclined to believe that their daughter had run away from home. But already in January 1988, an important entry appeared in the police reports. Isabelle could have been kidnapped for the purpose of subsequent sexual violence against her, or she could have committed suicide by jumping into the river. Her remains would be recovered from a well 18 years after the murder. After the first murder, the killers moved to the town of Fluin in the Sedan region and settled in a very modest house. They tried to lead a quiet life, not to attract the attention of the locals. Michelle worked part-time in different places. Monique did not work. But it is difficult to live in a small commune and not communicate with anyone. Neighbors provided the police with a video in which Michelle and Monique were captured at the christening of their son. You can see the footage of the dinner on your screens. the behavior of Michelle and Monique seemed strange to the neighbors. They practically did not maintain a conversation. Their faces expressed detachment. At the end of the holiday, Monique gave the mother of the baptized child a card with a poem written by her own hand. The poem ended with the following phrase, "Oh, if only I could tell you everything." A few months later, Fournier and Olivier told their neighbors that they were going to get married. They had a modest wedding, inviting neighbors. The guests were surprised that there were no relatives at the wedding. Soon Michelle and Monique had a son. For Michelle, it was the fifth child. For Monique, the third. Then an event occurred that greatly surprised the neighbors. The Fournier family moved from a modest house to a large old castle with its own garden and forest. The estate was located 600 meters from the border with Belgium. The area of the entire estate was 13 hectares. Fournier said that he had inherited it. As you understand, this was a lie. In March 1988, Fournier was contacted by 30-year-old Farida Hamish, the wife of Jean-Pierre Hiliguarc. Jean-Pierre, Fournier's former cellmate, was serving time for robbing banks. Farida asked Fournier to help her dig up a cache in the cemetery in Fontaine-en-Porésie. The cache contained gold bars and coins stolen by her husband and his accomplice. Michel Fournier helped the wife of his former cellmate. For her help, Farida gave Fournier 500,000 francs. The wealth he saw clouded Michel's mind. He suggested that his wife appropriate all the bars and coins. Monique Livier agreed. The couple lured Farida out of her house and took her to Clairefontaine-en-Yvelines, where the woman was strangled. The accomplices buried her body in the forest. Then the couple went to the house of the murdered woman and took the rest of the gold bars. With the money from the sale of the bars, they bought a castle called Château du Satou in Donchiri. But the police also became interested in the expensive purchase. The question arose, where did the former prisoner, a simple worker, get the money to buy expensive real estate? Feeling the danger, the couple decided to move to Belgium with their son. In addition, Michel needed new victims. On August 3rd, the couple went to the supermarket and ran into 20-year-old Fabienne Leroy in the parking lot. Michel quickly pointed out the new victim to his wife. The couple played out a scene. Monique felt ill, and they were not locals. So Michel asked the girl to show them the way to the hospital. Fabienne agreed. The girl was taken to the forest, where Fournier ordered his wife to examine the victim for a hymen. Monique refused to follow her husband's order. Michel flew into a rage, raped Fabienne, and then killed his victim with a pistol shot to the chest. In January 1989, Fournier met 21-year-old Jean-Marie de Srameau on an evening train to Charleville-Mézières. Fournier found out that the girl lived in a convent. He assumed that his new acquaintance was a virgin. The next day, he and Monique arranged a chance meeting with their new acquaintance. The couple invited Jean-Marie to visit them at the castle. In the castle, Michel attacked the girl and raped her. Manic helped hold her hands down. Jean-Marie's mouth was gagged. After the abuse, Michel strangled the girl. Her accomplices buried her body in the garden on the castle grounds. On December 20th, 1989, the couple crossed the Franco-Belgian border with their 1-year-old son. While crossing the border, Fournier saw 12-year-old Elizabeth Brichet walking down the street. The murderer asked the girl to show him how to get to the hospital. He said that his 1-year-old son had become ill. The girl agreed to show him the way. The two sadists were not ashamed even of their own son. Michel pounced on her. Having taken off her pants and underwear, he went into a rage. The girl was menstruating. He tried to clean the blood from her genitals, but then decided to take the victim to his castle. Elizabeth was raped and strangled. Her body was buried in the castle garden. The following should be noted about this murder. The girl had been missing for several years. There were reports of Brichet being seen in Belgium and abroad. The police suspected several people of kidnapping her. Brichet's mother, Marina Elbouz, helped organize the White March in honor of the missing and murdered children of Belgium. On November 21, 1990, near the west coast of France, Fournier and his wife drove to a shopping center in Rose, near Nantes. They saw Natasha Danet, a 13-year-old local girl, walking through a car park to her home. Her mother had sent her home to get her bag. The couple lured the girl into a van by asking her for directions. After driving to a secluded area near the coast, Fournier attacked the girl and raped her. He hit Natasha twice in the chest with a screwdriver and then strangled her. The body was dumped on the beach. Her neighbor, Jean Groix, was arrested in connection with Natasha's murder. The unfortunate man had a white van that matched the description of the girl's eyewitnesses who saw her getting into the car. 2 months later, Groix committed suicide in his prison cell. He could not bear the burden of being charged with murder. We told you about 8 murders. About those murders that were committed by a husband with the participation of his wife. 8 ruined souls, plus the death of an innocent person. After his wife testified, Fournier realized that there was no point in denying it any longer. He admitted his guilt in 8 murders. 7 of the 8 bodies were found. Michel Fournier was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. His wife hoped that she would not suffer the fate of Marc Dutroux's wife. The court decided otherwise. 28 years of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for 28 years. The convicted men were also ordered to pay 1.5 million euros in damages to the victims' families. Fournier and Olivier did not appeal their sentences. While serving his sentence, Fournier confessed to 3 more murders. On the 8th of July, 1988, he killed 18-year-old Marie Angel Dames. Her body was never found. On 17 May 1990, Johanna Marie Parrish was killed. She was killed in the French region of Burgundy while working at a local school as part of her diploma course in 1990. Parrish disappeared on the night of 16th to 17th May after placing an advert in a local Burgundy newspaper for private English lessons and arranging to meet a man who is believed to have contacted her with details of a potential student. Her naked body was found in the River Yonne in Auxerre. She had been raped, beaten, and strangled. And finally, another case in which Fournier was involved. The case of Estelle Musin on January 9, 2003, the day she disappeared in the city of Guermantes in France. Estelle was 9 years old at the time. Fournier died on May 10, 2021, at the age of 79, after being hospitalized with respiratory problems in a prison hospital. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other terrifying crime stories that shock the whole world. Support the author with a like. Take care of yourself.